So for our time for all ages today, we are going to do a little time traveling in our minds. Close your eyes if you like. Find a comfort in your body. Remember a time when you felt safe. What do you remember? What do your senses remember? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you see? What's the temperature? What clothes are you wearing? Are you wearing shoes? Are you touching or holding anything? Is anyone there with you? What does being safe feel like in your body? Can you put your hands on a part of your body that has this safe feeling? This feeling is always part of you, even if you don't feel it all the time. It lives inside you and is always with you. Breathe into that safe feeling. We remembered being safe in the past. Now let's imagine safety in the future. How can you make the safe memory happen again? If your safe memory was petting buzzy bumblebees on a lilac bush, how can you bring that into the future? By smelling the lilacs when they flower and looking for bees again, sure. But maybe you can do a little more. Can you plant lilac bushes? Can you help make bee-friendly gardens? If your safe memory was eating cinnamon rolls with your grandma, how can you bring that into the future? By eating more cinnamon rolls, but maybe you can do a little more. Can you make cinnamon rolls to share with someone else? Can you make a safe memory for another person? We have known safety before. Some of us our whole lives, and some of us in tiny jewel-like moments. But we can all dream of a safer world. And we can make that safety together in our real future. Come back to this moment now. Thank yourself for taking a little time travel. Janata Petrus, in her poem, Give the Police Departments to the Grandmothers, imagines a world where we shift the paradigm from control and subjugation to one of care, love, and relationship. If you're thinking that this is not a helpful proposal, that's not what it was supposed to be. It's imaginative dreaming, trying to vision a world of care where police officers no longer kill the people they are supposed to protect, where everyone is loved, everyone knows they matter, everyone is fed and taken care of. You know, like by a grandma. I hear the tension between the hurt of this world and hope for something better. And tension makes us grow. And there may be some tension for you in listening to your minister talk about police abolition. But I personally am not going to fire all the police right now and don't have the power to do so. So let's listen to what this discomfort can teach us. Let's start from the idea that this system of policing and punishment is not separate from us. Some of us have worked as police officers or otherwise in law enforcement, probably from good motivations, or a loved one has. And for some of us, we never have interactions with police except for the positive kind. And for some of us, it's much more comfortable to think of policing as having nothing to do with us. But this belongs to all of us. We have all inherited this system, and we all have the responsibility to pass down a more loving world to the coming generations. Despite what we think of as modern day policing, whether informed by police officers we know or from watching the abundance of cop shows on TV, police originated to control people of color and protect the wealth of white people. In the South, police evolved from slave patrols. In New England and western frontiers of the expanding colonies and young United States, police forces grew out of Indian constables who controlled the native people living among or at the borders of English settlements and American frontier towns. Police existed to keep people of color in line and protect the wealth of the white ruling class. Roles of police have expanded, of course, in the last 300 years, but this is the starting point in the idea that it's in society's best interest for white people to control Black and Indigenous people. Contemporary activists view police and prison abolition as part of the same abolition movement that sought to end the chattel enslavement of Africans and their descendants in this continent. And let's be really clear, this is not reform for the sake of making policing safe or just. This is ending policing and prisons as we understand them. The 8 to Abolition campaign says it this way: the end goal of these reforms is not to create better, friendlier, or more community-oriented police or prisons. Instead, we hope to build toward a society without police or prisons, where communities are equipped to provide for their safety and well-being. Take a breath. Some people's brains might throw on the brakes at this idea. How's your body? Loosen the muscles that might be tight. Uncross the things that are crossed. By defunding police, a major part of any government budget in this country, any amount subtracted from the police budget can fund non-police interventions that have a higher likelihood of preventing crime instead of punishing criminals after the fact, like schools, like housing unhoused people, like social workers, like social safety nets, medical care, food security. It's usually at this part in the conversation where somebody says, but what are you going to do if someone you love is murdered or raped? I don't know. We would need to figure that out. But I do know that a police officer has never unmurdered or unraped anyone, ever. And we haven't really talked about the harm police officers commit. It's estimated that 1,000 people die every year in this country in police interactions. Black people are killed at 3 times the rate of white people. Half the people killed by police in this country are disabled. Over a third of police officers have been violent to an intimate partner. Sexual violence is the second most common form of police brutality, disproportionately targeting women who are Black or are drug users. This is white supremacy. This is structural ableism. This is patriarchy. This is how the oppressions of our culture fit together. And they do so in terrifying fashion in the police systems. Unitarian Julia Ward Howe wrote the Battle Hymn of the Republic. She was a staunch abolitionist and so moved to see Union soldiers preparing to fight. But 5 years after the end of the Civil War, in our country's grief at losing so many soldiers, her view had grown. Ending slavery wasn't enough. She wanted to end war itself so that no mother would face the horror of losing her son in battle. We know from our Unitarian foremothers, like Julia Ward Howe, that revelation is ongoing. Truth continues to open up and be revealed. We are all learning, all growing. We know from our Universalist foremothers, like Judith Sargent Murray, that we are saved not by suffering, but by love. Safety comes from relationship, not punishment, not suffering. What we know about liberation is that a little liberation is never enough. None of us is actually free till we're all free. And a taste of freedom can open us up to new possibilities, all those answers we don't have yet. Maybe we haven't tasted enough freedom yet to imagine better. Rebecca Stevens Walter, who recorded our prelude, is an amazing theologian in addition to being a profoundly talented musician. Her field is children's liberation theology. According to Rebecca, children are the most oppressed people on earth, within groups that are privileged and groups that are oppressed. They have the least agency over their lives and suffer from things outside their control. And one of the things she says is that if we're going to have liberated children, we've got to liberate mothers to get there. Liberating mothers looks like creating a world where everyone has adequate health care, access to food, and a safe place to sleep. It looks like reproductive justice, environmental justice, and racial justice. It looks like paying women and other gender-oppressed people fairly. It looks like universal health care and childcare. It looks like never being afraid that your children will starve or that your employer will abuse you. It looks like good public schools in all neighborhoods, not just the wealthy ones. It looks like thriving, not just surviving. It looks like actual liberty and justice for all. One of the ways people are doing liberation of mothers is literally getting women out of jail for Mother's Day, paying the bail fees. And in this moment where even though no one should be in jail, let's get the mothers out, right? This is, you can go to the national bailout to find ways to get involved with that. Liberation for mothers. We know we are not there yet, and we have only to look at parenting in a pandemic to see that mothers are not free. Women have disproportionately dropped out of the workforce, not because their jobs were not there, but because they had to take care of their children and other family members. In multiple income families, mothers were more likely to have the lower paying job because they were doing this essential, stressful, and uncompensated work. They have absorbed so much of the stress of the pandemic, stress that the government could have taken on by being more proactive at the beginning of the pandemic. All of these things are related. It doesn't have to be this way. When I asked Rebecca Stevens Walter what songs represent liberated motherhood to her, she said almost immediately, Wading Deep Waters. So what does it mean if we are endlessly trying to get home? What if we're still trying to get home, lost between our hope and good intentions and the obstacles of oppression and inequality? Do we give up and build a home where we are, knowing it's not where we're meant to be? Or do we set our hearts on home, never knowing if we'll make it?